Thank you. I really appreciate this. The session yesterday and today has led up perfectly to the things that have been on my mind. And what I'm looking for is guidance in raising children as a parent. In two areas specifically. One, when you have children that come into the world with food sensitivities or food allergies, what can you do to support them? How best to support them?
Well, there is never a subject that applies more to what we've been talking about here today, meaning helping them get into sync with their own guidance, who is the offerer of the vibration which they must interpret through impulses. We're going to say it in the way we've been saying it already in these days that we've been together, and then we're going to apply it specifically to what you just said.
Okay.
So we've been saying to you that Source is offering a vibration of knowing. That's what's happening here. We're not whispering words into Esther's ear. We're offering knowing, vibrational knowing. And because she's in the vibrational vicinity, she's able to interpret the vibration into the meaningful words. So Esther is interpreting the vibration in a very manifested way here through the language that she's offering. But Source is offering to all of you all of the time. You all have the ability to receive and to translate that. Mm-hmm. Recognizing emotion, that realization, we want you to understand that that means you're getting a vibration and that you are translating it into something that is more tangible. So there are impulses that you receive. You know, when you're driving and you have an impulse to change lanes and you don't really know why. It's just an impulse to do it. And sometimes something happens that makes you realize what that impulse was. So we want to insert here this powerful understanding that, and we've said it several times already, your inner being knows where you stand in relationship with everything you want and knows the path of least resistance to bring you to it. So, you hear that?
I did.
So, what if your child is in sync and feeling an impulse to eat something? Mm-hmm. And what if eating that makes them not feel good? Does that mean it was the wrong path, or does that mean it was a clarifying path?
Clarifying path.
Does that mean something has gone wrong, or does that mean more information is being gathered? Mm-hmm. It might mean that there's enough resistance already within them that they're not really hearing clearly, and their translation of it isn't quite on target. But if you leave them to their own impulses, eventually they will figure it out. But what happens is, usually in the first response, parents freak out. And then they get out all those books and they ask all those others who are statistics about someone else and someone else's relationship to their inner being and someone else's relationship to their environment and someone else's relationship to their body and someone else's. And so then it becomes such a state of confusion that before long there's a guardedness about every single thing you go to eat. And there's a whole lot of people that feel that way who don't have severe allergies. We're surprised that any of you can find anything to eat. Because you've read so much about what's wrong with so much of all of it, you see. You've convinced yourselves, you've made food your enemy in so many cases. When your impulses, your inner being knows what's in the food. In the early days when Esther and Jerry were first receiving us, they were living in Tucson. And we were encouraging them to find as many ways to utilize us as they could. We said, go get lost somewhere in the city and we will guide you home. Go anywhere in the city and make a statement of where you want to be and we will guide you to your destination. In other words, we wanted them to know that we meant it when we said that we know where you are in relationship to everything that you want. So one day, they were in the grocery store. Esther was wearing her Charles Jourdan 6-inch heels, which was what she wore everywhere in those days. Things have changed. And she was walking around the grocery store with Jerry. They were selecting things. And Jerry said, Esther, what do you think about asking Abraham to choose our food for us today? And so Esther was willing. She is always eager to play those silly games. And so we walked around the store, and the way Esther describes it, we're wanting to give you her point of view for a moment rather than ours. Abraham chose this and 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 this, this and this, and filled the cart to the brim with things. And they went to the checkout stand, bought it, took it home, and put it out on the counters. And then Jerry said, Abraham, why did you choose this food that you chose? And we said, because none of it contains any preservatives. So that helped Jerry and Esther understand that we know what's in the food even without reading the labels. Jerry couldn't believe it. He picked up every single item and read it. It was easy to understand with the produce, but it was harder to understand with the bread. It was harder to understand with some of the other things. So what we're saying to you is the source within you, your children's inner beings, know what the content of the food is. Everything is vibrational. That food that is on the shelf or in the restaurant or on the buffet is emanating a vibrational signal. It is telling you who it is, just as you are telling the universe who you are. You cannot stop emanating the signal. And if you are in sync with the source within you, then you will be able to feel the impulse toward it. But almost no one follows their impulse. So what is the path of least resistance leading you to? Some might say, well, she doesn't look all that healthy. She looks like she weighs more than I want to weigh. And we say, you don't know what the intention is. You don't know if the intention is for vitality. You don't know. You can't tell with anyone else. We're just letting you know that when you are following the impulse from source within you about the things you do, it will always take you on this path of least resistance to the results that you are wanting every single time, you see. So you can't just begin by saying eat what you feel like eating, because if you say eat what you feel like eating to someone who's really in a terrible mood, they're not following the guidance from source. They're not in sync with the guidance of source. They can't hear what's being offered. You have to get feeling good and then follow the impulse. Feeling good and then follow the impulse. Feeling good and then follow the impulse. And what you begin to discover is that you will find along your path of least resistance the patterns and the behaviors and the experiences in all things that are most beneficial to you. You will also discover an enormous variety in those patterns and varieties. There is so much more than is good for you than you have allowed yourself to experience, because you've picked up beliefs along your physical trail that prevent you from exploring, you see. You are a species in the state of evolution, which means you are adapters. You are adapters to environment. You have energy flowing through you that can make you adaptive to anything, you see. And so don't test it by drinking Clorox bleach and then disagreeing with Abraham that you felt like it and it didn't turn out that well. Get tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and then follow the impulses, you see. And so what this conversation is about more than anything else is about being willing to risk allowing your children to find their own guidance system. Because if you don't let them find their own guidance system, they're going to be dependent on you and you on them, and they're going to resent you for a very long time. You've got to set them free to their own creating of their own reality, you see. Yeah.